students, welcome back to your history class. We were in the fourth lesson, the ancient civilization. Yesterday we studied about the Egyptian civilization. Today we will move on to the Mesopotamian civilization. The civilization of ancient Mesopotamia grew up along the banks of the two great rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. In the midst of vast desert, the people of Mesopotamia relied upon these rivers to provide drinking water, agricultural irrigation, and major transportation routes. Over centuries, the flood pulse of the Euphrates and Tigris left the southern plains of what it is now Iran with the richest soil in the Near East. For 3,000 years, the people of Mesopotamia maintained a significant degree of cultural unity, even though politically they were much fragmented. The rulers of this region were Sumer, Akkad, Babylonia, and Assyria, dominated the Mesopotamia as a whole at one time or another. During the times of great political unity, kings expanded their control beyond the two rivers, dominating the neighboring lands and controlling the trade routes of the Near East. The earliest known attempts at forming the large-scale empires were made by the Sumerian and the Akkadian kings of the late 3rd millennium BCE. See, Mesopotamia, it is the area which lies between the Tigris and Euphrates. In Greek, when we tell Mesopotamia, it means it is the land between the rivers. This region, children, the Mesopotamia region was ruled by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, and the Assyrians. Now let us move on to the political history of the Mesopotamian civilization. Sumerians were responsible for one of the first civilization in this region. The important city-states that flourished here was Ur, Kish, and Lagash. Sumerians, they used a type of writing that is called as a cuneiform writing on a wet clay slate. They had the contacts with the Indians. The Akkadian, they ruled over the Sumerians, and they were conquered and destroyed by the barbarians. Amorites, they were another Semitic tribe who ruled from Babylonia. They brought the Akkadian state under the control and established a large state. So, we can see that the history of Mesopotamia can be divided into 5 periods: Sumerian period, Akkadian period, Babylonian Empire, Assyrian Empire, New Babylonia Empire, and the Persian Quest. Now, let us move on to Hammurabi. Hammurabi was the sixth king in the Babylonian dynasty, which ruled in the center Mesopotamia, that is the present day of Iraq, from 1894 to 1595 BC. His family was a descendant from the Amorites, a semi-nomadic tribe in western Syria, and his name reflects a mix of cultures. Hamu, Hamu, which means family in Amorite, combined with the Rapi, means great in Akkadian, the everyday language of Babylon. In the 30th year of his reign, Hammurabi began to expand his kingdom up and down the Tigris and the Euphrates River Valley, overthrowing the kingdom of Assyria, Larsa, Ishuna, and Mari, until all the Mesopotamia was under his sway. He combined his military and political advances with irrigation projects and constructions of fortifications and temples celebrating the Babylonians' patron deity. The Babylon of Hammurabi's era is now being buried below the area's groundwater table, and whatever archives he kept are long dissolved. but clay tablets discovered at the ancient cities reveal the glimpse of the king's personality and statecraft. One letter records his complaint being forced to provide dinner attire for ambassador from Mare just because he had done the same for some other delegates. Do you imagine you can control my palace in the matter of formal wear? What now we'll move on to the Hammurabi's code. What do we mean? What is the code of Hammurabi? You can see this is a black stone stela containing the code of Hammurabi was carved from a single 4-ton slab of a diorite, a durable but incredibly difficult stone for carving. At its top is a 2.5 feet relief relief carving of a standing, you can see a standing Hammurabi receiving the law symbolized by a measuring rod and tape from the seated Shamash, the Babylonian god of justice. The rest of the 7-foot 5-inch monuments is covered with columns of chiseled cuneiform script. The text compiled at the end of Hammurabi's reign is less proclamation of principles than a collection of legal precedents set between the prose celebrating Hammurabi's just and pious rule. Hammurabi's code provides some of the earliest examples of the doctrine of lex talionis or the laws of retribution, sometimes better known as an eye for an eye. Children, did you know the code of Hammurabi includes many harsh punishments, sometimes demanding the removal of the guilty party's tongue, hands, breasts, eyes, or ear. But the code is also one of the earliest examples of an accused person being considered innocent until the proven guilty. The 282 edicts are all written in of then form. For example, if a man steals an ox, then he must pay back 30 times its value. The edicts range from family law to professional contracts and administrative law, often outlining the different standards of justice for the 3 classes of Babylonian society: the propertied class, freedmen, and the slaves. A doctor's fee for curing a severe wound would be 10 silver shekels for a gentleman, 5 shekels for a freedman, and 2 shekels for a slave. Penalties for malpractices followed the same scheme. A doctor who killed a rich patient would have his hands cut off, while only the financial restitution was required if the victim was a slave. So, this is the Hammurabi's code, children. Now, we will move on to the next topic, the Ashurbanipal, the Assyrians. See, at the time of Babylonia, this is Babylonia at the time of Hammurabi. Now we will move on to the Ashurbanipal. The Assyrian defeated the Hittites and ruled Mesopotamia. Ashurbanipal was the last great king of the Assyrians. You can see here, he is the king. I am Ashurbanipal, the king of world and the king of Assyria. He was a brave warrior and also a poet. He founded a royal library at Nineveh. You can see the kingdoms represented according to the this is Nebuchadnezzar. Next we will move on to the Nebuchadnezzar. After the Assyrian, the another Semitic tribe was of the Chaldeans re-established the Babylonian. Nebuchadnezzar is one of the greatest king among them. You can see them, the kingdoms, how it represented his dream. Yeah, the head of the fine gold represent the Babylonian Empire. The breast and the arms of silver, it represents the Mede and the Persian empires. The belly and the thighs of brass, Macedonian Empire. The legs of iron, Roman Empire. The feet and the toes of clay, kingdoms that arose after the fall of the Roman Empire. Now we will move on to one of the major contributions of Nebuchadnezzar is the hanging gardens. The Greek and Roman texts paint vivid pictures of the luxurious hanging gardens of Babylon. Amid the hot, arid landscape of ancient Babylon, lush vegetation cascaded like waterfalls down the terrace of the 75 feet high garden. Exotic plants, herbs, and flowers dazzled the eyes. The fragrance wafted through the towering botanical oasis dotted with statues and tall stone columns. Babylonian king, the Nebuchadnezzar II, was said to have constructed the luxurious hanging gardens in the 6th century BC as a gift to his wife. The Amites, who was homesick for the beautiful vegetation and mountains of her native Media, which is in the northwestern part of modern day Iran. To make the desert bloom, a marvel of irrigation and engineering would have been required. Scientists have summarized that a system of pumps, water wheels, and cisterns would have been employed to raise and deliver the water from the nearby Euphrates River on the top of the gardens. The multiple Greek and Roman accounts of the Hanging Gardens, however, were the second hand written centuries after the world's alleged destruction. The first hand accounts did not exist, and for centuries the archaeologists have hunted in vain for the remains of the garden. A group of German archaeologists even spent 2 decades at the turn of 20th century trying to unearth the signs of the ancient wonder without any luck. The lack of any relics was caused skeptics to question whether the supposed desert wonder was just the historical mirage. So, the hanging gardens was one of the greatest achievements and which is also one of the 7 wonders of the world, children. Finally, about 2500 years ago, the emperor Cyrus conquered the city of Babylonia, which resulted in the downfall of the Mesopotamia. Now we will move on to the next topic, that is the contributions of the Mesopotamian about the contributions of the Mesopotamian civilization. Mesopotamia were the first to adopt to the code of laws in the world. Hammurabi was the first ruler to enforce the code of laws. He had prohibited the abuses of slaves in his code of law. Mesopotamia had a trade relationship with Harappan civilization and also the Egyptian civilization. Each city had a guardian deity as in Egypt. High-rise temples, which is known as ziggurats, were built here. So these ziggurats were ancient towering, stepped structures built in the ancient Mesopotamia valley and the western Iranian plateau, having a terraced step pyramid of successfully receding stories or levels. They were made of mud brick that appears to have served as temples to the ancient gods of Mesopotamia. Ziggurat bases were square or it was a rectangular. Their walls were sloping. Now, when we move on to the ziggurat's temple, technical information. The ziggurats was built to honor the main god of the city. The tradition of creating ziggurats started by the Sumerians but other civilizations of Mesopotamia, such as the Akkadians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians also built the ziggurats for local religions. Each ziggurat was a part of a temple complex that included other buildings. The, the precursors of the ziggurats were raised platforms that date from the Ubaid period during the 6th millennium. The ziggurats began as a platform and was a mastaba like structure with a flat top, you can see here. The sun baked bricks made up of core of the constructions with facing of fired bricks on the outside. Each step was slightly smaller than the level below it. The facings were often glazed in different colors and may have had astrological significance. The kings sometimes had their names engraved on these glazed bricks. The number of floors ranged from 2 to 7. Now we will move on to the next. The people, they used the cuneiform type or cuneiform was the script which was used by the people during this time. And there was also one of the great epic poem of Mesopotamia, that is the Gilgamesh. This is one of the most important great epic of the Mesopotamian civilization. So children, with this we finish up with the Mesopotamian civilization. In the next class, we will move to the next civilization, that is the Chinese civilization. Thank you, children.